Montana. Welcome to What If I Say Yes, the YouTube channel. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Lucia?
I'm fine, thank you. We'll start this interview with you telling my audience who you are.
Depends on the day. That's a complicated question. I would have to say I am a constant work in progress. So I have a very varied life experience. And on some days I would identify as being Montana the artist. Other days I have been a firefighter and a caregiver, and right now I'm a clinical office manager and an accountant for medical clinics. So yeah, I don't know if I singularly identify with a what do I do, but yeah, I feel like I'm a work in progress.
Okay.
That's probably the best way to describe myself.
I usually ask this question because it's very interesting how different people choose to tell out loud who they are. So instead of me introducing them, I'm more curious about how they want to present to the world. So that's fine with me. So now let's tell the audience how we know each other.
Oh, goodness. So it certainly goes back a long time to the early 1990s in a summer in Mexico. Oh my goodness, I try to remember how young we were then.
Very.
Yeah, and I think your whole Cardenas family was a very precious experience to me. Certainly being away from home for some months and in a new culture and a new language, there were aspects of it that I, felt very vulnerable and very in a space of discovery. And I felt like each family member was a very special part of that experience. I think I felt safe when I was also feeling afraid, and I felt welcome when I was feeling far from home, and I felt included when I didn't know what to expect out of the experience. So it was full of art and laughter and music and learning and good food and different ideas. And I felt like you were such a vital part of that. I definitely admired how honest and open and curious you were, and I'm sure I was kind of an unusual element in your family as well, bringing the same things in reverse, being there from a different world, really.
Was that your first time in Mexico?
Yes, it was.
Oh,
it was. And I loved the, probably even now it still lives for me as a dream, and traveling to the Yucatan and seeing the cenotes and the pyramids, and it was just very rich experience. And I don't think I was flying at that point. I think I maybe did that after that summer.
Mhm.
that I actually had the courage to become a flight attendant and then travel around the world, you know? So I think it was a really big experience. I had been to Europe when I was in college,
Mhm.
but that idea that, oh my gosh, you can go and find a place anywhere in the world was very special. And your
Mhm.
family was definitely really key to that feeling that, like, oh, you can just belong to the world and not just to what's familiar,
Mhm.
you know?
I remember you coming to our house in Cuernavaca where we grew up, and it was lovely to see you, to meet you. Um, I don't know if you spoke a little bit of Spanish, but it was mainly us trying to communicate and trying to use whatever we had learned in our English classes at school to communicate with you. Um, your demeanor, your energy was always so lovely and positive and welcoming. And I must have been in college by then, because I remember asking you something very personal that I hadn't had the courage to ask anyone. And then you gave me advice that helped me tremendously. We're not going to make that public. You may not even remember what I asked you, but it was very important for me. And then, I mean, since then, you were a very important part of our lives, of our family. And we have been friends since then. So that's what, 1, 2, 3 decades. Woof!
Hard to believe. It's hard to believe, isn't it?
That's
Yeah,
a,
we're longer, we're older now than we were double the age.
but we have so many more life stories to share. And
Yes.
so um, this is now the perfect space for me to learn more about you and for you to share with my audience some of your very wonderful stories about your life. So I ask you to think of a moment in your life when you asked the question, what if I said yes? What if I say yes? And then you said yes, and then you got to do something. I don't know what that is, what you chose. It's going to be a surprise for me, as the same as for the audience. So tell us, Montana, what is it that you chose to share with us today?
Yeah, well, it was beautiful to read Hector's words about the walk with Valentina and the yes and the access that gives you to somebody else's universe. I thought that was very special, that yes can open the world and no can maybe protect your world. Not as in positive or negative, but as a maybe outward and inward, or you know, a boundary or a non-boundary, you know, in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel like I very much relate to that idea, and that has come up often in my own journey, where I found myself willing to be braver and braver about saying yes. So it made the summer in Mexico possible, you know, and it made the becoming a flight attendant possible, and it made becoming a firefighter and a paramedic possible, you know, where another part of me might have said, oh, I don't know how to do that yet, or, you know, that's for somebody else, or, you know, I think so it's quite a profound concept, you know, that it can open up chapters of your life if you say yes to a big enough thing, you know. So I think, to keep it contemporary, the most recent thing in my life, which is come at a time when I think, as I'm going to be 60 this year, and part of me was starting to look at how to be safer, you know, how to approach getting older, and knowing that we, my husband Lance and I have our house paid for, or, you know, as we look at, are we going to be able to retire? Are we going to be able to do some things that might be safe? You know, our two boys are raised, so our, you know, our nest just emptied out this year. And then in all those shifts, I think a part of me was trying to feel safer. And an opportunity came along. He's a physician, a general practitioner, and he knew that he wanted to go into private practice, and it seemed like a very daunting thing that was not going to happen. We had looked into it, and it felt like it was going to be just too expensive and too risky. And out of the blue, an elder physician called him ready to retire and offered him this opportunity to take over his practice.
So something is happening with our internet connection. And I just, when you left off, before your image froze, when this other MD contacted your husband and said, I want to retire, and offer him his practice.
Yes.
So what happened next?
Well, I think because, you know, Lance has worked for a couple of corporate versions of medical clinics and was very unhappy about having a corporation making the decisions that affect the patients and the staff, and just feeling that in general, the priorities are not in agreement with what he feels is correct for medicine. And so I guess I knew it had to be a yes for him. And that was an interesting dilemma to face my inner self that didn't want it to go that direction, because I knew how much work it was going to be. And knowing that this man I love needs this to be a big yes in his world for his experience as a physician to be fulfilled, you know? And so it's a whole different dilemma when you also are partnered with someone, and the yes has to be mutual for it to work. But my inner self was really resistant, you know? So in the last 6 months, so anyway, we were a yes, we did yes, and we jumped. And it was quick, you know, it was a phone call, and then it was within a week, the ball rolling, and looking at selling our house and buying the clinics, and me going from really 10 years of doing art and finishing raising our children to suddenly working full-time again. And not in a field that I chose, you know? So there was a lot of overwhelm, and realizing, this is like the biggest yes ever, you know? So that all happened in July. And at the time the doctor retired, I'll leave the names out of it, just
Sure.
the anonymity. But at the same time that this elder doctor was ready to retire, his bookkeeper and his office manager were all ready to retire. So we lost all of the structure, but we did gain this wonderful staff who already knew how to keep things going. But, you know, basically I went from having all of my time to do art or take care of my mother-in-law or go visit my mom or take care of our two boys or go hiking or hang out with a dog, paint. I mean, I was playing pickleball, and I really was just living a retired life already in a way, and then found myself completely immersed in realizing, oh my God, I have to learn how to run a business today, and it just felt like having to climb Mount Everest without having practice, It was like, oh my word. So, it surfaced a lot of fears and a lot of self-criticism and having to get out of my own way. And that's still very real right now. I mean, it's very raw, and I'm still having to confront that every day, that I feel inadequate, or I feel like I, don't know enough, or I'm going to be the one who makes it fail, or, and to have that coming to the surface at the same time as I'm trying to press ahead and learn, and realizing, at 60, you don't learn the way you did when you were 20. I'm finding that the quality of this particular yes has been it's not even a bittersweet. It's realizing I still have a lot of work to do. I'm still very much a work in progress. I'm having to learn how to be kinder to myself, because I don't necessarily know everything, or I'm not going to do it perfect. Over the Christmas break, our son Gabriel came home, and he's getting his master's in accounting. He wants to be a CPA. And there have been many times when we butt heads for different reasons, but part of it has been that I've wanted him to be willing to take more risk in life. He's very safe and very risk adverse. And he was my savior. We had to recreate the books over Christmas, because the books were really kind of dicey. And so he helped me understand accounting, which helped me understand inventory, which helped me understand, how to communicate with our CPA so we can do the taxes this year. And so it's very different from my art self or my adventure self, or, parts of me that I have willingly identified with. But this sort of grown-up self, which I have always resisted, I think I've always wanted to be more, I don't know, the creative one, or the playful one, or the adventurous one, or the fun one, or, and then suddenly being the responsible one, it's like, oh, nobody wants to be the responsible one, but it's come into my life many times, like that invitation to be responsible, to be a good adult, and I have often pushed it away. I don't want to be a grown up, but as I'm learning still enormous things about myself at 60, it's kind of exciting, because I think whatever that impulse is to just wind down or make life safer, definitely can make life smaller, So I don't know the end of this story yet. We're 7 months into it, and everybody's still getting paid, and the patients are happier than ever. We completely renovated both of these clinics, just Lance and I on weekends, going and painting and changing lights, and and the surprise in it for me is that both clinics have nice wall space, and my art is up and in the clinics. And so, some magic happens in that too, where I've been creating art for decades and really not had a venue to have it out in the world. And a couple of weeks ago, Lance had an elder patient come in who is legally blind, and the current pieces that I had been working on in the last year are larger than normal because we were in a space that I had a studio, and they're, sort of boldly colored, geometric, with some metallic things on. It's hard to explain them, but this gentleman walked into the lobby and he completely got excited because he could see the paintings.
Oh,
so, really blind, but he could see the colors, and he was so excited, and he went over and just wanted to look at the paintings. So it was like, whoa, what was that? And that wouldn't have happened if I didn't get on board. So I right now I'm trying to get out of my own way, because I feel like this was definitely an essential yes for my life partner. It started out as a reluctant yes on my part. I'm trying to learn how to be aware of, I guess, what my needs are within that, and how not to get totally swept away, and not have a balance for the other things I need in life, but still be able to be a supportive partner, but also a pleasant partner. And I can't say that's been true the last 6 months. I've really struggled with that, feeling very threatened or very overwhelmed. How to be in such a major transformation and still be a good sport about it.
It's interesting because I can see how, I don't know if you've gotten to that point, but from the outside, I can see how this is the space and the time where everything else you've done is going to help you get through this stage. For example, you were a flight attendant. That's customer service. You're doing that with the patients. You know how to treat people well, how to attend to their needs. So whatever is your job in those clinics, that's the part of you that already developed in the past. A paramedic, I mean, come on. All the things you learned there are going to come in handy right now. The firefighter work, I don't know specifically what's going to help, but if anything happens with the building, you'll know what to do.
That one's been the most, because we laugh about the retiring doctor didn't have very many systems in place. So his method was firefighting. Like, oh, there's a fire, we need to deal with this today, so that immediacy of a crisis has been the last 6 months, and we're trying to create systems that make it not crisis driven.
There you go. So this is where the firefighting experience comes in handy again. What else? Your artist self. This is going to be your gallery.
Yes.
How lovely to have every day people who come, see your work, but also who get fed by all the love that you put into your art. So it's like all these things you've done so far this is the place, this is your stage, Montana. That's how I see it.
I'm going to need to check in with you every week. You can remind me of that.
And the other thing that I was thinking, you reminded me with this, life has sent you different times the same invitation to become the responsible one. And not to say that you haven't been responsible, because only the job of taking care of two human beings is a lot of responsibility. But we're talking about the other responsibilities. So this lesson or these invitations that you have been getting from life over and over and over again until you were like, okay, I'm gonna take it. That reminded me of something that my oldest brother, Luis, told me once. That was, so life sends you a lesson and you may accept or not. If you don't, life is gonna send the invitation again and again and again until you take it. Now, once you accept it, you can just do a little bit, like do the work just a little bit, and then life will send you another invitation to keep working on that. Or life can send you an invitation and you can do all the work, and then maybe the next invitation that life sends you is going to be similar, but in a different degree of something that will make you grow. So it's up to you, but just know that you're going to get the invitation.
Like it or not.
Yeah. So you got it.
Yeah,
Now,
that's invitation is a nicer idea. I've sort of seen it as a like you get the hint that you're supposed to understand this, and if you ignore it, then you get hit in the head with a stick, and then if you ignore it, it's a 2x4, and if you ignore it,
yeah.
life
so now, to understand, so for someone in the audience, and that maybe most people who don't know the specific steps of what you went through. So you decide to buy the clinics, and then what are the specific things you have been doing up until now, like including everything, like the renovation work?
Yes.
Walk us through that process of hard work of before opening the clinics, and then once you open the clinics.
Yes. So so for me, the hardest part was the house that we were living in, the land we were on was kind of my, I don't know if you have like a fantasy of where you would want to say you're living your life, right? And I had my own studio. The land we had about an acre. It was a piece of wooded land with terraces. So there were stone walls, and the deer go through the yard every morning, and the little foxes are playing down by the creek, and it feels like there's no one around, no neighbors when you're in the space in the studio. So, I was in my heaven on earth, with a lot of freedom. And then the yes happened, and the two clinics were, the closer one is 35 miles from the home, and the farther one is 70 miles. So the option is, okay, you do that, and then Lance is driving. Crazy amount of driving. So it was very clear that if we were going to be yes, then we have to move. And so that just started me in a state of grief, really, right?
Living your paradise.
Yeah, and one day to the next. So I really thought we were just going to be in that house. Mm-hmm. And I was never going to have to move again. That was move 35 in my life. So I was like, I do not want to ever move again, So the resistance was there, and that was hard to give that room to be processed, you know? And so the yes happened, and then the house is on the market. We have to buy another house 30 miles away, close to the one clinic, in a much more expensive city. And at a time we were risking everything. So we went from our house is paid off and we could look at relaxing a little to, oh my gosh, we have to take on a big mortgage and a big unknown. And holy cow, you know, like that was the feeling for me. Lance is much more, at least up front, he can put on the front, right? Like, this will all work out. I'm sure he's scared too, but he can be more fierce. When he's scared, he like squares off and he faces the fear, right? And I look for, where's the high ground? How can we be, you know, how can we not get swept away? And he's like, no, we can, you know, face it straight. So our coping mechanisms were different, and that made and has continued to challenge us. Like, we have to really readdress some things in our relationship, because went from him going to work and me having my life and freedom to now we are having to work together also, which is a big challenge in different ways, you know? So once the yes happened in that way, it was house on the market. We had to buy a new house before he left his other company, because otherwise we would not be able to get a mortgage. So we, you know, all that had to happen. And then this 2 clinics, which we're still in the process, because with a medical clinic, the ownership is very complex and it's very related to your licensure. So we're still in the process of trying to figure out how to fully, legally, and completely transfer ownership. It's not the same as buying a business where there's not something as critical as the patient care and continuity of care. So you have to re-credential that provider and make sure that provider is connected to all the patients. And, you know, before Dr. Wee can be out of the scene, we have to have Dr. Lee all, you know, completely acknowledged by all the insurance companies, by all the patients, by all, you know, so lots of transfer of information. And that's still a work in progress. We're still trying to figure out how to do that with the IRS and, you know, all the powers that be, all of the medical licenses and the, you know, that thing. So, and then on our part, the way that the clinics are run was also another huge physical demand. So both of the clinics are, the one in Corning is a rural health clinic in a town that has a lot of agriculture, and it's the big industry is the olive business, the making of olives, canned olives. And so a lot of those workers are patients. But the clinics had been not maintained well, you know? So they needed to be refreshed. They needed to be really clean. They needed to have new lighting and, you know, and so all of that was this massive time and energy and financial investment to make the clinics feel cared about, so that the patients would feel cared about. And that was Lance and I going on weekends, just painting and changing lights and, you know, and deep cleaning floor and carpet and getting rid of old equipment and buying new equipment, you know, lots of financial stressors of just having to refresh everything so it felt clean and hygienic and inviting, you know. And then the other clinic, you know, we had to get new floors put in. It was carpeted, which was like so gross. Like, why would you have carpet in a medical clinic? You know, so pulling up carpet and getting new floors down and getting, you know, getting old wallpaper off the walls. And like, that was just physical work just to make the clinics beautiful so that, you know, patients would feel they weren't walking into something that was hinky or, you know, I don't know, old or dirty or any of that, you know? So that's been like, luckily, again, like you said, interesting that we had done that. You know, we had renovated homes already. We had renovated properties. So those skills were already there. And it was another dimension of applying those skills, you know? And it has a huge effect on the staff and the patients, you know, who can see this transformation and then say, wow, that's, you know, there's something new happening. There's something, you know. So then that's all happening on the physical level. On the staff level, same thing, like having people we had to replace all the computers. We had to replace the way that faxes are done and copies are made. And, you know, so the staff was very cute because they'd be like, "Ooh, what happened this week? You know, it feels like Christmas." But we realized like everything was, you know, 20 years outdated. And
did you get rid of the fax, or are you going to still use the fax?
We do, but it's some digital now. It's a modern one that can put it to the computer, you know, and you don't have everything in paper. He still had paper charts. So we're trying, you know, making all of that digital. And so lots of big system changes happening. And then on the back side, you know, like that's all the stuff that's visible, but all of this invisible support for a medical clinic is that the clean books that work, you know, the inventory that tells you what comes and goes from a clinic, how much it costs to have a patient come through the doors and, you know, have an appointment with the medical assistant and then with a provider. Like there's a cost to that. That's sort of a baseline, and he really didn't have any way to monitor that. And we also have we have a dentist who is a contractor with us, so that's a whole another can of worms, you know, learning how and what a dental practice needs to function. When you don't have that corporate backup, you know, which is, I'm sure, why so many physicians have gone to be managed by hospitals or corporations. There's so much paperwork. There's so much that goes on between the insurance companies and the billing of, you know, and then the follow-up and the getting it all in the electronic medical record. And you know, so for the last few months, it's felt like trying to learn 5 languages at the same time, you know, because there's systems, but they're, you know, there's bookkeeping, but then there's medical records, and then there's how do you deal with the insurance companies and bill and get that payment in? What part does the bank pay? Incoming, you know, and then payroll. Oh my God, payroll's a nightmare, you know, to make sure that everybody gets paid every 2 weeks. So all of those systems were having to be learned simultaneously, but then differentiated, you know, and from feeling like, yeah, I definitely was not engaging my brain in that way, you know, in any way. And now going into the 7th month, I feel like, okay, I'm starting to be able to separate these 5 languages I've been learning and see what's missing without it being all firefighting, right? Without it all being, oh my God, there's a crisis, or that bill didn't get paid, or, you know.
So now thinking of these 7 months, and I'm just thinking as the pregnancy metaphor, after 9 months, what is it that you want to give birth to? How would you like, you and Lance would like the clinics to be, to look like, to feel? What is the end, or what is the goal that you have? And I want you to try to link that with the first thing you said about you're gonna turn 60. You were looking about how to feel safe. How do you do tie up? Tie up,
yeah.
Tie up this with what you expect the clinic to be once you give birth to it after 9 months.
Yes. Oh, that is a good analogy. So we're kind of using the year. Maybe the gestation period's a little bit longer for a clinic.
Okay.
At a year, we kind of need to know that we are able to move forward without the retiring doctor at all having to be linked to the business anymore. So particularly, you know, there's always that concern if he were to pass away, like that would be dramatic, and it would, you know, if we're not complete with everything, that could be dangerous. Now, luckily, he seems to be in good health, so that we hopefully have more than a year. But we're using the year as the mark where, you know, all of that learning how to properly credential Lance and get things clearly into his complete ownership, so that vulnerability is not there, you know, that the whole thing could collapse if we can't transition it properly. I definitely have had a strong feel that it's been very challenging for the staff who had a lot of years of kind of coasting on you know, what was, and we've made a lot of changes, which is disruptive. And even though change is life, I mean, there's no life without change all the time. I think when dramatic change happens, it can be very distressing for people, you know. So we're trying to stabilize so that the staff feels the boat's not in a tsunami, you know, that there's a future to it, and not the fear for their jobs or fear for their families or things like that. So that's I think that's one of the markers, you know, that we'll get to that point where everybody can breathe and relax a little bit, you know. And I've tried to make a big effort in that way to appreciate how much their skills made it possible for us to make all those changes. And you know, they were holding that steady line for us so that we could make all the changes. And then I think for me personally, if I can feel that the back part of the business, the part that is invisible, is not in crisis, you know, so that if the books can be maintained rather than having to be generated, you know, the inventory can be done on a monthly basis with an order instead of, oh my gosh, we're out of toilet paper, you know, that again, crisis based instead of, you know, it would be nice to be system based where there's actually just a, you know, oh, it's time to do the inventory, you know. It's been very sweet. Our youngest son, Vincent, has expressed an interest to want to learn how to run the clinics. And he's in that process where he is, you know, trying to find his way. He's been at college, but not enthusiastically at college, and very much wants to learn from life. So, you know, we'll see how that emerges too, but he's right now bringing his tech knowledge and keeping the computers working at the clinics, and, you know, helping to set up a digital inventory so we can follow that. So, you know, there's some kind of sweet things that are unexpected that are happening with it too, you know. I don't know if that answers all that, but yeah. So back to this being 60 and looking for safety. I think I need a more balance for me. I would like for my part of it to be able to happen, you know, 3 days a week. And I do feel like at this point, no, it was cute when Gabriel left. He said, "Oh, Mom, I'm very proud of you. You're now an intermediate accountant." And, you know, so I feel like, oh, okay, he helped me really see how I can maintain the books and have them be legitimate. And, you know, I'd like to get that contained so that's not 24/7, you know, every minute. And then I'm not sleeping if I'm dreaming that something's wrong, you know. So I think to be out of that, that fear place and a little more confident that we are on solid ground, you know.
Well, that sounds a lot of work, but sounds lovely. I hope you get there. When is the year?
July 1st.
July 1st.
We started.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll send you a happy birthday card for the clinics on July 1st. So this is a lovely way to close the loop of the yes. Now we're going to move on to the no. So now tell us, having been this woman who has taken very important yeses in your life, just looking at the multiple jobs you've had, what was a moment in your life where you decided that no, saying no was the best option?
I would have to say it was probably related to a relationship that I was in before I met my husband. And I was getting into my 30s, and I was feeling quite clear that I wanted to have children, but not very clear about the marriage piece. I was a flight attendant at the time, and a man came into my life who was very aggressive about wanting me to be his choice, and very over the top romantic and very almost stalkerish in a way, like just pressing to wouldn't accept my no. That wouldn't take no for an answer. And so we started a relationship that was very consuming, maybe. And I felt very tempted to force the yes, because I felt like I was getting older and I was nervous about, you know, waiting too long to have children. And he was clearly a yes, you're it. This, you know, so it was like a very, very powerful yes from him. and there were many things that were good. And, you know, I'm not sure why I so strongly felt no, other than I felt like when I paused and my inside was no. I could tell I was no, but the circumstances were making me want to consider yes. And he was not willing to hear no. So I think when I paused and I felt like it was an addicted relationship, like I was some kind of a drug for him, and he was wanting me to bring him a happiness that was elusive for him, creativity that was elusive. So he saw those things in me, and he was, you know, identifying that he wanted those things in his life. But there was a lot of darkness there too, and some internal fear that I had of the dynamic that felt, I knew very deep inside I was no. Mm-hmm. And I was really struggling with how to be strong against somebody else's very powerful yes. And it ended up having to be a very difficult, like, move across the country kind of way, like physically having to get away from him.
So your clear no was just moving away, physically moving?
It was, yes. I mean, it was the conversation too, but a lot of resistance to my need for it to be no. And disbelief, and then wanting to press past that and wanting to turn it into a yes, you know? Mm-hmm. And I ended up, you know, needing to take care of my dad at the end of his life, you know, so that was a way for me to force the separation. Mm-hmm. But in the separation, I could clearly hear my inner self was no, you know? Mm-hmm. And it was difficult. It was difficult to hold the no when somebody else really wants a yes, you know? Mm-hmm. But I felt like doing that is part of that with taking care of my dad at the end of his life. I think a lot of my residual relationship fears were around my parents' relationship, which was quite contentious. You know, they weren't partners, they were adversaries much of the time. And I really didn't want that dynamic. And my dad was not a faithful person. And I related to my dad. I mean, I was like my dad in many ways. Mm-hmm. So I think I feared that part of me that was like my dad. And so taking care of him at the end of his life, I think gave me an opportunity to confront some of those fears with him. Mm-hmm. And we had, you know, 14 amazing months before he passed away. Mm-hmm. And in that time, it seemed like when Lance came into my life, I really wasn't having to process any of my dad with Lance, mm-hmm. you know, because I had my dad right there. I was working through it with him. Mm-hmm. So there was a clearing that was much cleaner and much straighter, you know. Mm-hmm. And curious enough, when that happened, my yes to Lance was enormous for me and quick. Like when I met him and knew that it wasn't a complicated yes. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting to have those things juxtaposed, you know, where I clearly had someone who wanted desperately for me to be yes, and I couldn't find it there, you know. Mm-hmm. And then for Lance to come into my life, and it was a very clear yes, even though there wasn't really any history to judge it on, you know. Mm-hmm. So it should have been a precarious yes, but it wasn't. So that was interesting, you know, that seemed to happen all in the same year or so, you know.
Mm-hmm. right now, having talked about this huge yes and this very important no, what would you say you've learned so far about yourself?
Around the yes and no?
Or around this specific yes and that specific no?
Yeah. I feel maybe that I'm braver than I think I am. Like, so, you know, sometimes I feel like it may be in the space of not knowing where life is headed or what the future holds. That the willingness to say yes to something new was to maybe not sit with myself, sit with the inner workings, you know, and but I yeah, oh, I don't know, that's a tough question. That is a tough question. I feel like this particular big yes has had me have to be back in touch with this idea that we're never quite done. You know, like you never maybe get the answers. You just have to sort of keep being willing, be willing to keep doing the work, keep willing to look at the places where life is confronting, or I'm feeling my own limitations, but they're very clearly my limitations, you know? And I'm back in that space where, wow, you just it's like that old saying about argue for your limitations and they're yours, you know, like you want to get to this place where you think you understand yourself, right? Oh, I know who I am, or I know what I'm capable of or what I'm not capable of. But I don't necessarily want that to be as limiting as I've made it, maybe, you know? And so there's that invitation again, right? That invitation again from life to keep growing, to keep challenging those edges, to keep being willing to not know myself, and not think I know all the answers, you know, not think I have it all figured out, and hopefully be able to be more vulnerable to that without feeling somehow that's a weakness, or, you know, yeah, I would have to say that it's that, you know, that being back in a more vital version of what can I learn from this? You know, how can I be curious about this? How can I grow from this? And how easy it is as we grow older to think you're sort of supposed to have it all figured out, you know, and that inquiry is for younger people, or for, you know.
I also love thinking of your two sons looking at you and Lance, specifically at you, because you're a woman, no, how important it is for them to see you doing all this work and trying all these things and working on, at almost 60, working on creating something important for your life, your partner, the family, the legacy. That's lovely. That's lovely. It's going back to that phrase of it's more important. I don't know if I'm going to say it correctly, but it's that people learn more of what they see rather than when you tell them what you tell them.
Yes.
They're seeing you making this huge change in your life that is going to make it so wonderful for you, for Lance, and for them.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I think what I have definitely seen of myself is if I have a task, I can be almost obsessive about it. So it's very hard for me to put down work when I think the work needs to get done. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the challenge for me right now, as an older person, but also hopefully as a wiser person, is that there needs to be a balance. Mm-hmm. Like I really don't want to be all work, no play, or all, you know. And so learning, I definitely in the sort of the crisis part of transition where it was massive amount of learning that had to happen, it really required everything. But as those systems become more supportive and more maintainable, mm-hmm. instead of having to be created, I would like to have that self-care that I can put work in a time frame and I can still go out and play pickleball and take care of myself, take care of my playful self, take care of my art self, take care of my, you know, I do go out and just need to be in nature, you know, and when I get obsessively working, I can forget that. I can forget how absolutely essential it is to have the balance of work and play, and you know, and so I think this is that's probably the biggest invitation for me right now is, can I do this work and can I take care of myself at the same time? And we'll see. I mean, I'm hoping I can learn how to do that, you know, because I definitely find that when I have a to-do list, I can just become obsessive about it, like, and lose that balance and lose that ability to say, oh my gosh, the sun is out today and I really, you know, I need to get some exercise, mm-hmm. you know, and then that, and I think you tell that in yourself in the way that you are in your energy, mm-hmm. you know, because if I am becoming obsessive, then I'm also often becoming defensive or, you know, closed down or not open to input. Mm-hmm. You know, I can feel that. I can feel that in my body, that just, you know, needing to isolate to be able to focus and not being able to flow with mm-hmm. with the day or with, you know. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely still much to learn.
Very nice, very interesting. Well, Montana, I appreciate very much you coming on to this channel, opening your heart to us and telling us these very crucial moments in your life that I'm also hoping help other people to figure out their own conditions and when to say yes, when to say no, why, with whom, for what. So thank you so much. This has been very therapeutic for me. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation.
Wonderful. I miss you.
Yes. I miss you too. One day we'll make it over to California.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah, come in the summer. We'll have lots of play.
Okay.
I've enjoyed being pen pals.
Yes.
That's been lovely.
The almost lost art of writing letters. We're still at it.
It is. I'm not giving it up.
And so my last request for all my guests is that if you could please send me pictures, images of all the things we've talked about, so then the audience can see, I don't know, your clinics or your art or when you play pickleball or whatever you decide to share with us, please send them my way and I'll add them at the end of this video.
Oh, that would be great.
And thank you so much again, Montana.
Thank you.
Te quiero mucho.
Oh, I love you too.